The bell's already been rung, and they've heard it. Out in the dark, among the stars. Ding dong, the god is dead.
With what fans have affectionately called the Snyder Cut coming in 2021, I think it's time that we look back on Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Zack Snyder's Batman v Superman was one of the most divisive comic book movies ever made. Critics reacted by giving it a 28% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, I'm not going to claim that Batman v Superman should have gotten an Oscar or anything, but I do think that it has been horribly misunderstood, and that it's actually one of the best comic book superhero movies of all time. I think that at its core, Batman v Superman is a superhero movie about Western civilization's God problem, and the ideas that have led us to reject the notion of God, especially the God of the Christian tradition and scriptures. Zack Snyder gave a lot of energy and attention to trying to establish Superman as a sort of Christ-like figure in Man of Steel. There's the sometimes rather obvious visual clues embedded in particular scenes.
There's a chance I can save Earth by turning myself in. Shouldn't I take it?
You can save all of them.
There's the sense that Kal-El, which could loosely be translated from Hebrew as vessel of God or voice of God, came from heaven but was rejected in his own hometown, just like Jesus of Nazareth. There's also the interesting adaptation Zack Snyder makes to the Superman story, the change that he makes from most comic book sources, the change that has Clark's earthly dad no longer on the scene as Clark steps into his Superman calling, similar to the disappearance of Jesus' earthly father Joseph as Jesus' story moves into his ministry years. So as you step into Batman v Superman, there's already this sense that's been established that God has come in the flesh, but humanity is uncertain as to how to respond to him. I think to truly understand and appreciate this movie as something entirely different and deeper than most comic book movies, you need to be able to understand three main theological and philosophical ideas or themes that are being explored in this movie. The first idea. First, Batman v Superman starts as a movie with a theodicy problem. Theodicy is a term coined by the 17th and 18th century mathematician and philosopher Gottfried Leibniz to describe the historic theological and philosophical problem with the existence of evil in light of a God who is supposedly both all good and all powerful. Obviously, you can see deep questions about the problem of evil in the biblical literature like the Book of Job. But this hasn't just been an issue for Christian or Jewish theologians. You could go all the way back to 300 years before Christ and find the Greek philosophers like Epicurus wrestling with this question too. Epicurus famously asked, quote, "Is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Then he is not omnipotent. Is he able but not willing? Then he is malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then whence cometh evil? Is he neither able nor willing? Then why call him God?" The film establishes this theodicy problem as one of the central themes of the movie by starting the movie with the tragic death of young Bruce Wayne's parents, and then connecting it in the very next scene to Bruce's overwhelming anger at the suffering of thousands of innocent people in Metropolis as Superman fought Zod to save the world. Caught in the wreckage of one building, Bruce finds an employee of his trapped in the rubble named Wallace Keefe.
Help me. I can't move my legs. You're gonna be okay. You hear me? Wallace? What do they call you? Wally? Huh? You're the boss.
Bruce then rushes to save this little girl who this god Superman would have let die in the wreckage.
Okay. You're gonna be okay. You're okay. All right? Huh? You know what? We're gonna find your mom. Where is she?
We'll explore the major theological and philosophical ideas embedded in Bruce Wayne/Batman's character in a little bit, but it's important to note at this point that Bruce's response to the problem of evil is to end up denying the goodness of God. Superman may be omnipotent, but he isn't good. The relatively minor character of Wallace Keefe plays an important role in establishing the problem of evil as a central theme, too. Keefe loses his entire family and the use of his legs in what becomes known as the Black Zero event in Metropolis. His response? To climb a monument built in Superman's honor and paint the words, "False God." And what's Lex Luthor's problem with Superman? Well, it seems like this very different iteration of Lex has a Theodicy problem, too.
Boy, do we have problems up here. The problem of evil in the world. The problem of absolute virtue.
I'll take you in without breaking you, which is more than you deserve.
The problem of you on top of everything else. You above all. Because that's what God is. Horus, Apollo, Jehovah, Kal-El, Clark, Joseph, Kent. See, what we call God depends upon our tribe, Clark Joe. Because God is tribal. God takes sides. No man in the sky intervened when I was a boy to deliver me from Daddy's fist and abominations. I figured out way back. If God is all-powerful, he cannot be all good. And if he is all good, then he cannot be all-powerful. And neither can you be. They need to see the fraud you are. With their eyes. The blood on your hands.
Lex has questions about the moral superiority of an omnipotent God who could allow events like Black Zero to happen. Lex wants to rebel against the hierarchical structure of reality, which would make humans' wills subservient to the will of God. If this supposedly omnipotent God didn't choose to step in and save young Lex from the physical abuse he endured as a child from his father, then what gives God the moral grounds to demand obedience from humanity? Maybe God's will should bend to man's.
There we go. There we go. And now God bends to my will.
At first, I admit I disliked the portrayal of Lex Luthor as a millennial Silicon Valley sort of beta male billionaire. But the idea has grown on me, especially when I think about how so many people in my generation, as an older millennial, have rejected the idea of God because the God that was communicated to them was a God of absolute power.
That should be upside down. We know better now, don't we? The devils don't come from hell beneath us, no. No, they come from the sky.
This brings us to our second major reason why Superman's rejection in Batman v Superman is symbolic of Western civilization's God problem. Postmodernism. One of the major critiques of this movie has been the portrayal of Superman as never happy, never optimistic, and struggling with whether he has a place in this world, instead of the smiling, happy, always optimistic blue Boy Scout with red underwear that we find in the comic books and Christopher Reeve films. But I think this is Snyder and even more likely Batman v Superman writers Chris Terrio and David S. Goyer's point. That Superman of truth, justice, and the American way can't exist in today's America. Now, what's postmodernism and what's that got to do with any of this? Postmodernism is a philosophical and ideological movement that challenges the legitimacy of universal meta-narratives or universal guiding stories. It challenges the notions of universal truth and justice. Postmodernism calls into question the stories about God, especially those stories held by cultures in power. Clark and Lois's boss at the Daily Planet, Perry, regularly tells Clark that those Smallville values of honesty, integrity, hard work, truth, and justice are dated ideas from the past.
Police won't help. The press has to do the right thing. You don't get to decide what the right thing is. When the planet was founded, it stood for something, Perry.
And so could you if it was 1938, but it's not 1938. WPA ain't hiring no more. Apples don't cost a nickel. Not in here, not out there. You dropped this thing.
They don't fit in America anymore. Now, I'm not trying to make postmodernism some boogeyman. The deconstructive force of postmodern thought in Western civilization doesn't take hold in culture without there being some real unjust powers that use their all-encompassing stories as a weapon to hurt and oppress many people. The problem has become the chaotic nature of the deconstruction, which has destroyed the good along with the bad. For many, this God with an S on his chest isn't a symbol of hope, but a symbol of oppression, simply because he has power.
Do you know the oldest lie in America, Senator? It's that power can be innocent.
And in so much of postmodern thought, to be in a position of power automatically means a position of oppression. Lex gets this, and in his quest to kill God, he even creates situations to manipulate public perspective on Superman and show that this God you believe is good and just is just a powerful oppressor.
I've come here to tell them to wake up. This is flesh and blood. He has delivered a war here, and this is what war looks like. I have nothing.
There are plenty of people, sir, who would say he's their hero.
He is not a hero.
This is why Lex creates the incident in Kenya where Superman shows up to save Lois from the warlord, but Lex has his goons kill the people in the village and then set fire to it. And then, in a crucial scene not in the original cut of the movie for some reason, frame Superman for the destruction. This is why Lex also brings Wallace to the Capitol hearing and orchestrates the bombing while Superman is in the Capitol. This is all to make this God look and feel like an oppressive force. The third major idea, nihilism and existentialism. The third major idea explored in Batman v Superman through the character of Bruce Wayne, Batman, is nihilism. Nihilism is the rejection of all religious and moral meaning. It is the feeling that life is meaningless. There's various forms of nihilism, and there's various forms of the response to nihilism we could call existentialism. And we find it in philosophers like Soren Kierkegaard, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Albert Camus, just to name a few. But the simplest way to describe existentialism and how it relates to nihilism might be that existentialists accept that one might not be able to objectively find meaning in life and that the universe is absurd, but that even in the midst of that we can still choose to rebel against the meaninglessness and choose to make meaning. Throughout much of the comic book source material, Batman the Animated Series, and the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy, Batman is frequently presented as an existentialist hero. Gotham City is a cold, absurd universe where even good people like Thomas and Martha Wayne can get killed by just some random punk with a gun. In the face of that despair, a young Bruce Wayne chooses to rebel against what appears like the objective fact that Gotham City is a hopeless place, devoid of all meaning. So what if Gotham is beyond saving? Can he save one person from enduring what he had to endure as a boy when he watched his parents killed before his eyes? And in all the best versions of Batman, in my opinion, this is his goal. Just save one.
Save one. What? Save one person.
Maybe it's absurd to care about that one, but that is what makes Batman an existentialist hero, and the Joker the constant nihilistic temptation to give up, reject his moral code, and succumb to the absurdity. This Batman v Superman version of Batman has succumbed to deeper degrees of nihilistic despair than what we've seen in any previous big screen adaptations of the character. He's lost his moral compass, and even Alfred sees it.
Alfred, we've always been criminals. Nothing's changed. Oh, yes it has, sir. Everything's changed. Men fall from the sky. The gods hurl thunderbolts. Innocents die. That's how it starts. The fever, the rage, the feeling of powerlessness that turns good men cruel.
Historically, nihilism emerged as the result of the death of God, or we could say the death of traditional Christian notions of God as they fell out of fashion in Western civilization. It's fitting then that as Batman moves deeper and deeper into nihilistic despair, he actually moves closer and closer to symbolically killing God through attempting to kill Superman. Someone even asked Zack Snyder on social media a few years ago, why with all the tech at Batman's disposal would he use a kryptonite spear as a weapon to kill Superman? And Snyder responded with this famous painting of Christ on the cross, with the spear piercing his side. The final step in Bruce giving into complete and utter nihilism would be Bruce symbolically killing Christ.
Breathe it in. That's fear. You're not brave. Men are brave. I bet your parents taught you that you mean something. That you're here for a reason. My parents taught me a different lesson. Dying in the gutter for no reason at all. They taught me the world only makes sense if you force it to. You were never a god. You were never even a man.
Now, what is it that changes Bruce's mind and heart? It wasn't the omnipotence of God. Instead, it was the humanity of God in the flesh.
What does that mean? Why did you say that name?
He sees a God who suffers too. He recognizes that this Christ figure was born of a woman too, just like him. Kal-El, the voice of God, the logos, if you will, shares in his humanity. And I know all the jokes and memes about saving Martha out there, but I think people who see that as a ridiculous plot point miss the deeper symbolic message, a message that you don't see often embedded on this level in other comic book movies. Now, we have to talk about the third act of this movie as the conclusion. After seeing the humanity of God, Bruce is on his prodigal journey home, to the recovery of his hope, meaning, and purpose. But Lex, on the other hand, is obviously not happy that God isn't dead yet, so he unleashes the devil.
I gave the bat a fighting chance to do it, but he was not strong enough. So, if man won't kill God...
2, 1.
The devil will do it. Now God is good as dead.
Wonder Woman, who has lost hope in humanity after seeing the evils of men throughout history, enters the fray when she's confronted with what the devil unleashed on Earth will do to humanity. Finally, it's not Superman's power, at least as we normally conceive of power, that defeats Doomsday. Instead, it's Superman's Christ-like sacrifice which breaks the power of this demonic force. In fact, it's the very spear designed to pierce his side which is used to defeat this evil. This is very much in keeping with an old idea in historic Christian theology that can sound paradoxical. The death of humanity is defeated through the death of the one who is fully human, fully God. At Superman's funeral, we hear the classic Christian hymn, Amazing Grace, played. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Blind as a bat, perhaps? The death of Superman has given Bruce eyes to see and a renewed hope in humanity. He heads into the next chapter of his life with a new sense of purpose and meaning.
Man is still good. We fight. We kill. We betray one another. But we can rebuild. We can do better. We will. We have to.
As the camera cuts to Clark Kent's grave, we see the dust beginning to rise from the coffin, a hint of the coming resurrection of Superman. But before that hopeful resurrection can happen, we get hints at what the future film may explore, the film that is coming in 2021, the film that we didn't get with the original Justice League that Joss Whedon took over. In the final confrontation between Batman and Lex, Lex warns Batman of what is coming in the aftermath of the death of God.
This is how it all came caves in. Civilization on the wane, manners out the window. But the bell's already been rung, and they've heard it. Out in the dark, among the stars. Ding dong, the god is dead.
He predicts the destruction of civilization, just like Wayne Manor has been destroyed. The bell cannot be unrung. And this is why I'm so excited for Zack Snyder's Justice League to finally come out. From my perspective, these are the only comic book movies that are challenging people to consider such important religious ideas and philosophical questions. Will the death of God, whether through deconstructive forces of postmodernism and nihilism, or through the inability of religious leaders to show the God revealed in a crucified Christ who shares in humanity's sufferings to result in the chaotic destruction of our civilization? Will in that vacuum of power something far more sinister descend upon us? Can we do anything to stop it? Thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to see more film critique that explores theological and philosophical ideas in popular movies, make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel. That lets me know that this is something I should keep investing my time and energy into. Special thanks to those in the Deep Talks Patreon community, people like BJ, Carolyn, Eli, Josie, Luke, Paul R, Paul S, Sarah R, Sean C, Stephen M, Tim K. Thank you for your support.